Hi, in this video, I'm going to show you how to use data assets and data stores within Azure Machine Learning Service. In my previous videos, I showed you how to deploy an Azure Machine Learning Service using bicep scripts. And if you remember, I've created a storage account and then used it as part of the deployment. I'll try to recap this just by using the portal here, right? So you can also use the Azure portal to deploy an Azure Machine Learning Service. And then if you see this, right, so you can either provide an existing storage account or you can create a new storage account as part of the deployment. Also, you have options to configure how you want to access this particular default storage account. Okay, there are two options. First one is a credential based access. The other one is the identity based access. I'll cover both of these access types later in this video. Let's go to the Azure Machine Learning Service. If you look at it, right, so if you go to the properties section, you can see that, I've used the credential based access as part of my deployment. Also, if you go to the storage account, and then if you go to the settings configuration, you see that I've allowed the storage account key access. What this means that anybody who has access to the storage account key can access the storage account and then use the data within that particular storage account. Okay. All right. So let's go to the Azure ML, data here, right? So if you go to the assets data section, there's data assets and data stores. And if you click on the data stores, you see a bunch of data stores already created for you. Okay. So these are the default data stores that gets created as part of the deployment. Okay. So data stores acts like a reference to your storage service and it stores the connection information. Okay. Again, if you see this, right, we can use Azure File Share, Azure Blob Storage, and you can also use the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, SQL database, all of these as a data store, right? And then data stores again allows you to store that connection information with it. Okay. If you go to the default blob store, so each of these data stores stores certain type of files, and if you look at for example, the workspace working directory, it stores all of your notebook files, that are part of your Azure ML workspace. The data store also provides you a UI, so you can use the browse section here, browse, and then you can browse through all the files within this particular data store. Okay, let's go to the workspace blob store. And if you look at the authentication type, right, it is using the account key as an authentication type. And then if I go to the browse, I've uploaded a CSV file, titanic.csv, into this particular storage account. Okay. All right. So why do we need a data store, right? So for that, let me walk you through an example here, right? So I have a compute instance running. Okay. Let me go to my notebooks folder. Then let me open a terminal. So I've created two environments for this demo. Let me activate the first environment. So this particular Conda environment doesn't have any Azure AI ML packages, any packages that are tied to the Azure ML workspace. Okay, but this relies on two main packages. One is the ADLFS, and the other one is the FSPEC. Okay, so ADLFS is a Python package that you can use to connect to the Azure storage account. For example, if you want to use a DAS data frame or a pandas data frame, you can use this particular package. And it also depends on this FSPEC Python package. Okay, let's go to the terminal here, and let's go to the data store folder. So I've created a bunch of Python modules just for this demo. Let's go to the no data store file. If you look at this, I've imported pandas. I've created a .env file. I place the storage account key, which is what I'm going to use here. So this is pointing to the storage account. This is a container name and the file path, the CSV file. Okay. And if you look at this, I'm using the ABFS prefix. So this is what, ABFS and ABFS is. These are the prefixes that you can use to connect to this storage account. Okay. Also, I've created a storage options here. I'm passing the storage account name, the account key. And then finally, I'm using the pandas read CSV file and then passing the file path and the storage options. Okay, so this is a simple file here. So let me close this and then let me run this. As you can see, I'm able to connect to the storage account using the account key and then, pull this data into a pandas data frame. So any user who wants to use the CSV file, you have to provide the account key for them to access this. Okay, you can also use the role-based access control. You can assign them a data plane permission and then use it. But again, right? So you need to manage all that, right? So what Datastore does is it stores the account key with it, right? For example, the workspace blob storage, it stores the account key within it. The account key gets stored within the key vault that is assigned to the Azure ML workspace. Okay, and that's what it's using. Okay, let's see how it works, right? So let's go to the CSV file again, and if you copy the URI, you see there is Datastore URI and then storage URI. Storage URI is what you have used, in the previous code. And if you go to the Datastore URI, so you see this, right? So it has an Azure ML prefix, and then it's pointing to the data store, and then it's pointing to the path here. Okay, let's go to the code again. Okay, this time I'm going to activate another environment. Okay, so I've activated this environment. There are two packages that I'm using here. Okay, Azure AI ML and then Azure ML FS spec. Okay, so in this environment, let me also print all the dependencies. I'm not using the ADLFS here. Okay, Azure ML FS spec also uses the FS spec as a dependency. That's the reason you see this. But otherwise, I've not installed the Azure the ADLFS Python library. Okay, so let me open the file. So I've created a Datastore comparison file. Let me open that. Okay, let me comment this out and then uncomment. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm using the data store and the file path. I'm creating a URI with the Azure ML prefix. So basically this is the data store URI, subscription ID, resource group, workspace name, data store, and then file path. Okay, and then I'm passing this into the pandas.read CSV to load this into a pandas data frame. Okay, again, since I have the Azure ML FS spec package installed, right? So that is going to take care of connecting to the storage account. Okay, let's see this in action. Let me save this and then let me run this file. As you can see, I'm connecting to the workspace blob store where the CSV file is located. And then as you can see, right, so I'm able to successfully connect to the storage account using the Azure ML file prefix, right? And then pull this data into a pandas data frame, right? So, I don't need to, so basically any user who wants to use this file now, you just need to provide them access to the Azure ML workspace and they should be able to connect to the CSV file and then, pull this data into a pandas data frame. Okay. So what we did was there's a default storage account. We don't have any data plane permission. And then we have used the credential based, like the account key, which is a credential based access. So any user who has access to the workspace, would be able to read this particular CSV file. In the next example, I'm going to show you how the identity based authentication works. For that, I'm going to create a new storage account. And then I'm going to create a data store within the ML workspace using the identity-based authentication. Okay. And then I'm going to assign this, myself a data plane access in order to access the storage account. Okay. So let's go to the Azure portal. And then I've created a resource group, RG Analytics. And then within this, I've created a storage account, a container here. And then I have the file, the same file placed within this particular storage account. Okay, let's go to the Azure portal. Let's create a data store. Let's call this analytics. Select the Azure blob storage, the new storage account, blob container. And then, I'm not going to save the credentials with this particular data store. Okay. Let's do this. And then let's go to the code again, right? Let's open the file. This time I'm going to comment this out and then uncomment this particular line. So basically this time I'm going to connect to the analytics data store with this file path. Okay, let me save this and let me run this again, right? So if you run this file again, it's connected to the analytics data store with the Azure ML prefix, right? You see, I was unable to access this particular data store. Okay, the reason being, if you go to the storage account, access management, so I only have the control plane access. I don't have the data plane access. Okay, so let me go ahead and then add myself the storage blob data contributor role, which gives me the data plane access. So basically I'm assigning the storage blob data contributor role at this particular resource scope. Okay, it takes a while for replication. Let's go to the Azure ML workspace again. Okay, let's run this. You see, now I'm able to connect to the Azure storage account and then pull the data into a pandas data frame, right? So this is how the identity based access works, right? So we created a data store. We have, we created a new storage account, created a data store, and then, we didn't save any credentials with the storage account, with the data store. And then when we granted myself a data plane access, I was able to use the Azure ML prefix and connect to the file, right? Again, this is more secure because you're not you're still controlling who gets to access the underlying data within the storage account, right? So the way Azure ML FS spec works, right? So if you let's go back to the code again, right? So I've not imported any libraries, right? What I did was I just imported the pandas package here, and then loaded the file into the pandas data frame, right? So the way Azure ML FS spec works is it uses the same default Azure credential chain, and then generates the access token, and then connect to the storage account. Okay, so I've created this check identity just to show you what happens when this default Azure credential is run, right? So I'm trying to generate an access token here, connecting to the management plane, the ARM, right, with logging enabled. Okay, so let me just run this code here. So when I ran this, it generated this auth access token. Let me copy this, paste it in the JWT MS. As you can see, so this access token is tied to my object. Okay, so basically it generated an access token and then use my access token to connect to the storage account. So Azure ML FS spec library is kind of handling all that. Okay, so basically that's the reason you were able to connect to the storage account. You can also use ADLFS to and then you can pass your credentials, and then you can connect to the storage account, and then create a pandas data frame. But basically Azure ML FS spec simplifies this, right? So it provides like a uniform like API to connect to any of your data stores, right? So if you have like multiple different data stores, you just need to follow a simple pattern versus creating your own code to connect to different type of storage accounts. All right, so let's go to the next topic. So data assets. So data assets acts like bookmark to your data. Okay, so let's see this in action, right? So let me create a simple data set. Let's call it the Titanic data set, right? So data asset, there's different types of data asset types. There's a file, basically it just references a single file. You can reference a set of files, this folder, right? And then there is ML table. So ML table, is like if you have multiple different files or folders, and you do some transformations, right? All of that is abstracted away within the ML table, right? So basically the logic and everything can be made part of your ML table. I'll show more of this in the later videos, but yeah, just know that there's different asset types, data asset types, that you can use. Okay, so let me select the file here. Let me go to the next screen. So here you can point to a URI on a web URI, or a URI that represents your data, right? Or you can point to the data that is sitting within your storage account, or maybe the data stores, right? Or you can also use a local file. When you point to a local file, it would be uploaded to your default storage account. Okay, so let me click on the URI here, and then let me just copy the public URL which has the Titanic dataset. Let me just skip the data validation here, and then create it. So what it did was it created a version on this data asset, and it points to this particular location. Okay, you can create multiple different versions, so you can also create a new version, let's say but again, the data asset is storing your metadata. It still references a file that is sitting within your storage account. Okay, and data assets are immutable. You can't, once you create it, you can't kind of delete it. You can archive it, but it just doesn't, it's not displayed. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So basically you can also click on a data asset, you can archive it, but it doesn't physically remove the data asset from the system. Okay, and data assets, they like, what the other advantage with data assets is You don't need to provide the full path. All you need to do is use the Azure ML, Azure AI ML client, pass in your credentials, and then connect to the data set and the version, right? So you don't need to provide the full path and everything, right? Even in jobs, right? So you can just point to the data asset, the version. You just again, more on this would be covered in the later videos, but this is how you create a command job. You pass the input data, which is the data asset here, and the mode, whether you want to mount it or whether you want to download. There are different modes that are supported, and then you also need to pass the environment, which is needed to run your job, right? So basically, environment kind of packages your dependencies, like your Python dependencies, for example, right? So it would be packaged within an environment, and then that environment is going to be used when the job is executed. Okay, and whenever you reference a particular data asset, in a job, all the jobs that references the data set would show up here. Okay, so you have that lineage as well, that comes with using a data asset. Okay, all right. So let me just quickly show you how to use this. So the same pandas data frame, right? So let's copy it. Let's go to the notebook section. Let's create a new file. Let's call it read Titanic DS. I'm using the default Jupyter kernel there. Let me copy it, and then let me just print the. So the ML client here, basically I'm just trying to use the config, like it needs a subscription resource group and ML workspace name, and then the credentials. It's going to use it to make a connection to the ML workspace, this particular ML workspace, and then I'm able to successfully read the file, right? So just by referencing the data set, and the version number, I'm able to connect and read the data into a pandas data frame. All right, so in this video, right, so I've covered the data assets and data stores. I'll share the links in the description. But yeah, thanks for watching.